And we're live. Welcome to Publishing Without Supervision podcast. I am your host, Erica Conroy, and joined as always by the handsome, wonderful, freezing his balls off Xavier Granville all the way in Canada. Hello, Xavier.
What's up, internets? I'm buried in snow.
Yeah, the glare from his window, if you're watching us on the YouTubes, is snow glare. The glare from my window is sunshine, because it's summer here. I just got to rub that one in.
Yeah, if I opened up this window, the snow would just pour in.
Oh, well, don't do that. Awesome. Okay, well, today's episode is cozy mysteries, and we will be talking to a cozy mystery expert today, author Sara Rosett, who has written many cozy mysteries and also runs a How to Outline a Cozy Mystery online course. So welcome aboard, Sara. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So should we get straight into the line of questioning? So let's start with the completely obvious question here. What is a cozy mystery?
Okay, well, a cozy it's grown out of the tradition of like an amateur sleuth, like Agatha Christie type mystery. And it has an amateur sleuth. It usually is first person. Its protagonist is usually a female, and it usually takes place in a small closed community. It can be like a little village, a school, cruise ship, a train, anything that kind of limits the amount of suspects. And the core thing is that it's a mystery. It's focused on either who did it, like someone's died, who did it, and it can be, most of the time it's like who did it, or it could be how did they do it, or how do we catch them? So there's some couple little varieties, but basically it's a puzzle, and readers are trying to figure out the mystery before or along with the sleuth. So that's kind of like a big, broad overview. And some people feel like cozies are a very narrow definition. Like if you look on Amazon or you go to the bookstore, the cozy section will have like really bright covers and illustrations for covers. And a lot of them will have puns for titles. And that's very popular right now. But I think cozy is a little bit broader than that. I think like an amateur sleuth is a cozy mystery, just like a different category. Yes, you agree?
Yeah, because I'll just throw this out there now. My chosen genre for this publishing journey is going to be cozy mysteries, and I've started writing. And after I did the outlining course, I've started writing, and she's not the kind of happy, bouncy, kind of illustrated cover kind of character, and I've been a little bit worried that maybe I'm not writing a cozy mystery.
Well, I think as long as you have, like if it's not a PI, it's not a detective mystery, that's a different category. And if it's not a police procedural, then you're left with amateur sleuth / cozy. So, and some cozies would be like super cozy on the I guess cuteness scale would be far very, very cute. And then there would be others that are maybe a little bit darker, or I don't know, dark, but a little more serious maybe would be a different way to put it.
So why do you think readers choose to read cozies? What's the attraction there for them?
Well, I think they have to like the main character and whatever they're doing. And a lot of times cozies will have like the main character has an interesting hobby or occupation or something. And so people like kind of getting a glimpse of a different world. I think that they like that they're light and they have some humor. They're not like really dark and gritty and depressing. And like you don't pick up a cozy and, like when you finish a cozy, you feel okay. You don't feel depressed or sad. I think people like that. They like escaping to another world where they would like to go. I think of it as like a lot of places that are the settings are like somewhere that people would want to vacation. They're like, oh, that sounds like a cute little village I would love to go see, or a cute little small town. So I think it appeals to like, they like that type of atmosphere. And then cozies have a strong friends and family element in them. Like all the sleuth is connected to a lot of people, and they like those relationships. So.
Yeah, that's true. You do see a lot of them based in like small English cottage towns type of a thing, rural villages.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it quite like that, actually.
Well, it's handy because it helps limit the suspects.
Because your Murder on Location series is set in England, but on the other hand, your On the Run International Mystery series is globetrotting. So what do you think we need to think about when creating our cozy setting? What's important there?
Well, I would say the Murder on Location series, that's in a small little English village, and that works out really well. The On the Run series, that's got cozy elements to it, but I don't know that it would be technically a cozy. It's got more romance and travel and adventure kind of, so it's kind of a odd duck. It doesn't really fit in there very well. But I think when you're planning your cozy, it helps if you think about your setting, about how it can be limited, because like if you're in a big city and it could be anybody that committed the murder, your plot isn't going to work as well. If you have a small group, if you have like Murder on the Orient Express takes place on a train, and you've got a set group of people. If you have like a small town, you can have your first book take place in that town, and then in your series, you can explore different parts of the town, different people in the town, different geographic areas, things like that. So if you think ahead, you can probably plan out a couple of books.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So you brought up Murder on the Orient Express. So like, what elements from these types of classic mysteries, like the tropes, like the MacGuffin or the red herring, femme fatales, what elements can you borrow from those, and then put those into your cozy?
Okay, well, you've got to have like the cozy setting. You've got to limit it, and then you've got to have your suspects, your victim. You've got a sidekick, like somebody who's like the best friend that you can talk to and talk things out. You need like I think probably like some humor. They're not too dark. There's lots of different things you can do with the basic elements. Like you can switch them up and give them your own twist, I was trying to think of other tropes. Like a really popular trope is the main character falling in love with the investigating officer, and that happens a lot in cozy mysteries. Animals are another big trope that people love to read about. The hobby element is kind of an aspect that people enjoy. Those are just off the top of my head. If I think of any more, I'll chime in.
Yeah, and the second part of the question, I guess, would be like, what are certain parts from more contemporary or classic mystery that you would avoid when putting into your cozy? Like, you got such a wealth of all these great mystery writers, but when you're writing a cozy, you probably don't want to be using all of their tool sets, right?
Yeah, you don't want to try and throw everything in there, because then it just gets to be too much. One thing that they used to do a lot, like Agatha Christie would have the gathering of all the suspects, and the detective would go through and list, well, you could have done it, but you didn't, and you could have done it, but you didn't. And they don't do that much anymore. I mean, you can do that if you can figure out how to work it into your mystery, but I'd say that's something you probably don't want to. Most modern readers are not as into that as like classic mystery readers were. And then you just got to kind of decide which things appeal to you. Maybe you're not into animals or knitting or whatever, and so don't put those in your book.
Yeah, mine aren't going that way. But yeah, I have noticed that bakers and animals
Food's a huge.
and currently witches are really popular in supernatural. Do you think it's a good idea to follow what's currently popular, or should we, try and be a bit more original there with that kind of theme?
Well, I
Side
think
question: do you think Scooby-Doo will have a comeback?
Anything is possible. Well, if they tried to make a movie and it didn't go well, so maybe not. I would say, like, if you love food, if you love a certain thing and it's popular, or if you're very into supernatural, go for it, because you can write that and enjoy it. But if you're not, like, if you don't really like to cook, I wouldn't write a cooking mystery. And because I know people that's what they write, and they have recipes in all those books. And so they have to come up with new recipes for every book. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, I'm so sick of cooking," you know? So, think about whatever you're interested in. I don't know that you should necessarily chase, what's popular. Although, like with my Murder on Location series, I knew that Jane Austen's always popular. There's always people who are interested in that. So I kind of added that to the mix for the plots and stuff, but they're not totally centered on Jane Austen, but there's like a little element of that. So you can add something in and not totally focus on it, but only if you enjoy it, I would think.
Yeah. That's good to know. And you said that some people include recipes. What kind of it probably is bonus content. What kind of bonus content do you include in some of yours? Do you include bonus content?
Well, I have a series, the Ellie Avery series. It's a traditionally published series, and that character is a part-time professional organizer. So I put tips in there, like, how to get organized for back to school if the story centers around, back to school or hosting a party or whatever it is. In the other two series, I don't really do that. I figured that, I don't know that readers are buying the books for the bonuses. Maybe in the case of recipes, they are, but I think more than anything, they're buying it for the story. And then that's just a nice bonus.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So some people include like knitting patterns, not recipes, patterns and things like that. So if you're into that, that could work.
Yeah. Because I noticed at the end of the Murder on Location series, for at least the first book, which is the only one I've read, unfortunately, but I'll be reading more because I quite enjoyed it.
Okay.
You include like further reading for scout locations, the making of Pride and Prejudice, and other books that were Jane Austen related. I thought that was quite interesting for those who might be more interested in Austen.
Yeah, I thought they could go deeper with that if they were interested, because the character is a location scout. And so I did a ton of research, and that was kind of letting me give a shout out to those people to say, hey, these were the books that helped me, learn how this works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting nowadays, because of the popular medium of like so many books being out there, that now the ability to pay homage is just it's so easy to do it nowadays. I have characters in my one novel that like I literally took out of Ghostbusters and just dropped them in. Just said, "What? Hey, let's see how this goes." And what people have read the book were just like, "Yeah, that's my favorite character."
Oh, that's cool.
So switching, I guess, away from just like the elements of a cozy, for Erica, since she's now kind of creating her amateur sleuth, what tips can you give her to flesh out that start up private eye, I guess?
Well, I would say that, mysteries are very plot heavy. And, you have to have a good mystery to satisfy readers. They don't want it to be too easy, and they want all the clues to be there. But the protagonist, I think, is even more important than the plot, because like the mysteries that I want to go back and read, the series that I want to read, I like the protagonist. So I think it's needs to be a person who is interesting, has something kind of unusual or fascinating about them. I think that you have to write about somebody that you want to spend time with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. And like with the Ellie books, that was my first mystery. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. I mean, I wanted to write a mystery, but I didn't know how to start. And so I thought, well, I'll just make her like me. And so she was a mom, she had little kids. But then I thought I didn't want her to be totally me. So I made her a part-time professional organizer because I thought, you know, that's something I was interested in and I might actually learn something if I research that. But then I thought if she's an organizer, people are going to maybe be a little intimidated. So I gave her like no fashion sense at all. So she's really good at doing certain things, but then like you have she's good at this, but she's not good at this. And so she has a friend who can like go into a thrift shop and buy 3 things and look fabulous, you know, and Ellie would go in there and she'd come out looking like a bag lady. So she has somebody who will help her kind of with these things. So I think you have to give them, you know, depth. You have to make them somebody you want to hang out with and make it interesting. If there's too much of an every person, then, you know, why would we read about them? So there's a really good book by Alita Windenheimer, I believe. Windenheimer. I can't think of the name of it, but I can send it to you. And it's about characters, about creating interesting characters. I thought it was really good. So
that'd be great. I would yes, be very, very happy to get something like that from you because yeah, characters are very essential to the storytelling, and I don't think my main character is as likable as she could be.
But I mean, you know, a prickly character can be likable. I don't know if you've heard of the Agatha Raisin books. They're a cozy mystery set in an English village, and Agatha is like so prickly, but inside, you know, she's got that soft center that you hardly ever see. So that's kind of, I think, why people like her, because of the contrast, because she seems one way, but inside she's a little softer than she appears. So
okay, because Amanda M. Lee, who I often refer to, she has a one of those sarcastic characters that I quite like, but not all of her readers like. But yeah, so it's good to see that you can have a variety of character types.
Yeah,
types in there.
And do you subscribe to like when I see a lot of like the TV shows nowadays, it's not like there are a lot of police procedurals, but what I'm seeing a lot more is like the consultant type of thing, like where they take a character who has got a quirk about them, and that's the reason why that they are good at solving the crime, or otherwise that's the reason why that they're good at pointing out what the cops are not seeing.
Right.
Do you subscribe to that? Like, is there something in your mystery where because of her organization skills that's what makes her better at solving that particular crime?
Sometimes you can use that. I've done that, and I know what you're talking about. Like the mentalist, it's because he's got these fake abilities or whatever, or the consultant like Castle or whatever. Yeah.
And you can argue even like Sherlock Holmes, just because he's slightly insane, he can kind of see into the other spectrum
things around, that other people wouldn't see. So yeah, a lot of times, like whatever the interest is that the main character has, the sleuth, that will be the key to unlocking the mystery. And so I've used that, and you know, there have been other books where I haven't, where, you know, it really doesn't have anything to do with professional organizing or whatever, but it's nice if you can loop it in, because it gives them a reason to be there and to be involved. You know, that's one of the problems with the amateur sleuth cozy mystery is you have to come up with a reason for your character to be involved, and it has to be a good reason, because most people are not going to be interested at all. They're going to stay far, far away from a police investigation. So that could be a reason that your character gets involved in the story.
Yeah, the only the only other thing that I guess I'd say is what you want to avoid is that sometimes when you give them too much of a quirk, then they're no longer amateur.
Right.
So at least like I find the books do it better, but rather than the TV shows, where it just kind of seems like they make the cops look like idiots. Just because this person, like especially like with the mentalist and stuff like that, where this person just seems to have insight on people that other actually you're just bad cops.
Well, that's sort of, you can use that. You can use that, oh, they're just not very smart as a reason your sleuth would get involved. But that's kind of like one of the weaker plot devices, I think. I mean, if you have somebody who's a really good, I mean, and that is like a trope. I didn't think of that, but like the dumb cop is a trope of cozy mysteries. So you can use that and maybe put your own twist on it, or you could go to the other end and have somebody who's really competent, and that's very different from a lot of the cozies that are out there.
So going back to a previous trope you mentioned, where the love interest is usually the lead investigator, does that mean that the lead investigator is dumb, or?
See, there's a problem right there.
Some of these main characters have questionable taste in men. That's the case.
True, yeah.
So does a cozy mystery always have to be around a murder, or could it be some other crime?
It could be another crime. I think that the seriousness of a murder kind of gives the story the weight, and it gives your character motivation to get involved. Whereas if it's like a theft, maybe a kidnapping might be something else that would work. But I think it needs to be something pretty serious to motivate somebody to get involved. And then the consequences, talk about raising the stakes throughout your story. If it's a murder investigation, the consequences are pretty high, So, so I think that it could be, but I can't think of many cozies that it's not a murder. And it's really odd that cozy mystery readers, they like the atmosphere, the cozy kind of cute little village, but they're okay with murders, which is kind of a dichotomy, but they're okay with it, so it works out.
Well, I guess it's because from what I've seen from reading cozy mysteries is there's not that graphic detail about the murder there that is in other kinds of mysteries.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention when you asked me like about the definition of a cozy, like no graphic violence, all that takes place off stage, and usually not a lot of cussing or swearing. I mean, there are, different types of cozies, but the majority, I would say, they avoid, bad language.
So if we're going for murder, when and how should the body be discovered in a cozy mystery?
Well, you can do it however you want. That's one thing I like about cozies. I mean, any mystery, like you've got your basic structure, I would say the mystery needs to be introduced early on. And some people have like these hard and fast rules of like, oh, the body has to be on page 1, or the body has to be there at the end of act 1, or on page 50 or whatever. And I would say as long as you've got an element of a mystery and the murder is introduced, like in the first quarter or first third of the book, you're going to be fine, because that's what readers are reading for. I read a cozy once, and then the body didn't appear until about halfway through the book. And I kept thinking, well, maybe this is miscategorized. Maybe it's not a mystery. So you want to have that near the beginning, early enough that your readers go, okay, now we know what we're doing here. But as far as how it's discovered, it's like you can be as creative as you want. You can do, you can have your sleuth find it, or you could have a friend find it, which is a good way to pull your sleuth into the investigation. You may not find like the whole body, as long as it's not a graphic description. You may find a part, or the body can be found and then disappear, or maybe the person's just disappeared and you're searching for the person, so there's a lot of things you can do. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, it does. That's perfect.
Yeah, and I like what you said about being able to use the murder as a reason to pull the character into the story. One of my books was totally modeled after the Maltese Falcon, where you kind of just introduce the character, set up the femme fatale, bring in the best friend character. Scene 2, best friend's dead.
There you go.
And it is just one of those great setups, because the mystery wasn't enough to get the character involved sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the personal reason to get into the mystery, like sometimes there has to be actual motivation other than just there's a mystery to solve, kids.
Mm-hmm. Right. And like if you have a police procedural or a private eye novel, that's their job. So they're automatically involved in it. Whereas if you have an amateur sleuth, you have to figure out, well, why is she interested in this? Why is she pursuing this? And you can come up with a lot of reasons. Maybe they suspect her. Maybe they suspect somebody she loves. Maybe the person who died is somebody she loves. So as long as you're, coming up with good reasons for them to be involved, that's what you need for a cozy.
Right. And do you think that, like you're saying, how you can kind of be as creative as possible? Do you think you can be as realistic or detailed as possible, or likewise, if you're going more that amateur route, where, like you said, the cops are kind of doing the main investigation,
Mm-hmm.
where you have your cozy amateur kind of doing what she can? Like, do you try to separate those two worlds, or do you try to bring them together and make it as close to that police procedural-esque type of a thing?
Well, like as a cozy reader, I'm not as interested in the police procedural aspect of it. So when I write, I have a tendency to bring the police in and they're there a little bit and then they're off doing their thing. And my amateur sleuth is doing her thing, because I feel like the readers are more interested in the protagonist and how she's doing it. But it's really nice if your protagonist has some sort of in or tie with the police department somehow, because she's going to need to find certain things out as the story goes along. She might need to know like the time of death or details about the murder weapon or something like that she would not normally know. So if she has a little in with the police, maybe she's got a friend who works there as a dispatcher, or one of her friends is married to a police officer or something like that. It can give you a little extra, some more options when you're plotting out your story.
She knows that the reception guy likes jelly donuts, so it's an instant.
That's right.
Social engineering. So I think also what X was trying to touch on there with his long question was how accurate, I suppose, do you have to be with like, do you really need to know about guns or certain things that pop up?
Yeah, I think if you're writing about guns, you should know about guns, because if you get it wrong, you will definitely hear about it. And like that's one of the things I talk about in the course is, like, if you're going to use poison, you may have to research it and find out all the different side effects and how it affects different people. Like, as far as police procedural, I try and be accurate as to like what they would do and what they can do. Like, they can't just come in and search your house without a search warrant, but maybe there's the threat of that. So like, you have to do enough research that it's believable, and because you don't want to take a wrong step and pull your reader out of the story and have somebody go, oh, they would never do that, because then you kind of lose credibility and they may not come back, to finish the story, because they just don't care anymore. I've researched things like in the United States, if there's a crime in a city, the police usually handle the investigation. If it's in an unincorporated area in a county, usually there's like a sheriff's department that handle it. And sometimes they have inter-office coordination. One of my books takes place, or several of them actually take place on a military base, and I had to do a bunch of research on how, because they have their own investigation people, and you had to find out all that stuff. So I try and be accurate, but not let that take over the story, because, they're reading for the mystery and what your sleuth is doing. That's what the most interesting thing is to most cozy readers, I think.
That's great. So I can't think of any questions about how to write Cozy Mystery book number 1 anymore. But I do have a question of, how do you write Cozy Mystery number 2 and 3 and etc.? Like, if you set up the book number 1 perfectly, but how do we continue this coziness? How do we just get into bed with it?
Just keep it going. Well, that's another thing. Cozy readers love a series. So if you can write, 7 or 8 books, they'll just eat them up, So I would say, like with your first book, if you can go back and look and see maybe there was an interesting character that you would want to explore their world more, or maybe there was an interesting place. Some of my books, I'll write about like a certain part of the town, and then I'll go, oh, I haven't even written about that old factory or whatever, and you can base your mystery around that. Just kind of whatever catches your interest. And then maybe it's something out of your main character's past, maybe something that some unresolved issue comes up. There's lots of things you can do that, I don't know that there's necessarily you must do this next, but so I kind of take my inspiration from, like, sometimes I'll be writing a book and I'll think, oh, that's a good story, but it doesn't fit in with this at all. So I'll just kind of put it on the back burner and then maybe come back to it later. Sometimes your things kind of flow naturally. Like you'll have, like in the Murder on Location series, like 2 of the characters got together. So of course there has to be a wedding. So that's the book I'm working on right now. There's a wedding.
You've just ruined it for me. Spoilers.
2 of the characters. It could be anybody.
Yeah, I was just realizing that because it's closer to the second half of the first book that you kind of make it seem like there's another character that she might be slightly interested in, as opposed to the one she's had sparks with already. And I was like, I see what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of played around with that a little bit, so you'll have to see what happens. But I'm not a big one on love triangles, so I didn't draw that out.
I've kind of got a love square maybe going on with my one, so we'll see.
That could be a twist on the normal love triangle thing, so that's cool.
Oh yeah, make it a square instead. Oh, we'll see that coming.
And I guess one more follow-up question to that: how much of those kind of like down the line story threads are you already considering in book 1? Like, are you kind of are you one of those types of authors where you already know that your character's complete backstory and all the potential for another character coming back at some point as the murderer?
No, I don't plan that far ahead. And I know some people who do, and they love it. And I mean, if you can do that, I think that's great. But for me, I usually start out with the first book and then maybe a couple of vague ideas for other books in the series. And like the On the Run series, I thought 3 books and we're done. I could kind of see where it could go for 3 books. And then readers really liked that, and they asked me to write another one. I thought, well, I had some ideas, like, okay, I'll do a 4th. And so that book had a turn at the end that I didn't see coming and allowed me to continue the series. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. But like, you just don't know. Sometimes you have to get into it and start writing it. And as I write it, I'll get more ideas. But I don't plan out, 7 books down the line. I just can't I can barely keep 1 book in my head, much less 2 or 3.
Yeah, because there's always the ongoing amateur sleuth, isn't there? Because there's so many Agatha Christie's of books out there with Poirot and Miss Marple. It's kind of like whatever thing or murder you could think of. I guess you're really only limited by how many ways you can kill a person, right?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about what happens when you run out of bodies.
Then you move to another small town.
Or you go on holiday, or people move in,
Yeah. And a lot of authors in cozy mysteries, they'll take their series on the road because they're like, man, this is too unrealistic that, there's 7 bodies in this one little village. So they'll have a home book and a way book and a home book, and so they kind of alternate and let her, see some other places. But you have to be careful when you do that, because if you take all the elements that people enjoy, like the setting and all the supporting characters, they might not enjoy that away book as much.
It's like when an actor will do a good movie and a bad movie.
Yes. Or if somebody's really used to a certain type of story and then they go do another type of genre, everyone's like, wait, what?
You betrayed us.
Well, I think I've exhausted my pool of questions. What about you, X? Are you out
Yeah,
too? You tap?
I think I'm interrogated out.
We didn't even have to resort to waterboarding to get the answers to our questions. That is awesome.
Thank goodness.
It's good. I did have the super soakers at the ready.
You've got a lot of snow that you could use to fuel that once it's melted. Yeah, so that's excellent. So, Sarah, where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, I'm at sararosett.com, and my Cozy Mystery course has a short little 3-video intro. It's free. If people are interested, they could go to sararosett.com/jumpstart and sign up for that and get those for free if they're interested.
Awesome. And I'm currently looking through that one as well. After I went for the online course that was paid for, I'll just give you a quick little testimonial here. I mean, I've read quite a few cozy mysteries. Not the really knitting ones. I can't do that. And there's only so many baking ones I can take. But I wasn't completely confident that I knew what a cozy mystery was. So by taking your course, it reinforced what I already knew, but it also gave me some new things that I hadn't even considered to think about. So, I felt much more confident, at least outlining my cozy mystery after taking your course.
That's good, because there's a lot of things as you get into a story, you don't think about them until you get into it. So I was trying to put everything that I could think of in there so it would be helpful. So good. I'm glad it was. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for thinking of creating it, because not many authors will, spill all their magic beans on their genre.
Well, I mean, it took me a long time to figure out a lot of the things that were like trouble points, like why am I having trouble with this part of the story? So I thought if I could, help somebody get there faster, and you learn, as you do something, as you teach something, you learn it yourself over again somehow. So,
awesome.
So if any of your listeners are interested in the course, I've got a coupon code they can use if they'd like.
Yeah.
The price went up in 2017, but they could do the coupon code February FEB 2017.
Awesome. Because we pre-record this episode and it'll probably be going out on the 16th of February. Will it still be good?
Yeah. Or I'll make it good until like mid-March.
Oh, awesome. Even though it says Feb.
Yeah. It'll work.
Well, that's great. That's great, because authors love discounts.
Yes. I know. And it's when you're getting started, it's tough. So.
So thank you very much for coming in and answering our questions. I hope it wasn't too painful.
No, it was fun. Always love talking mysteries. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And people can find our podcast website at pwspodcast.com, where we will include information about Sarah's books and her bio, as well as the coupon code, and hopefully a link to that book about characters that you mentioned.
Yes, I'll find it and send it to you.
Awesome. So that'll be great. So that's it from me and X. X, do you want to close us out with the usual outro?
Sure. Good night, internets. Goodbye.
Bye.